会堂举行仪式，欢迎马来西亚总理安瓦尔对我国进行正式访问。
So today, me and my team decided to present about China foreign policy, bilateral agreement between Malaysia and China. So here, as you can see, this is an agenda for tonight. So
present a bilateral agreement between China and Malaysia as an example of how nations use such agreement to achieve their diplomatic and economic and strategic goals. For introduction, foreign policy, as we know, is government strategic approach to safeguard national interests, foster values, and maintain international relations for security, economic prosperity, and overall well-being. Bilateral agreement, formal contract between two nations, serve as instrument in this foreign policy toolkit addressing topics like economic cooperation, defense, and cultural exchange. For context, next. For consideration, the bilateral agreement between China and Malaysia exemplifies the adaptability and resilience required to navigate the complexities of the 21st century and demonstrate the continuous values of diplomatic cooperation in shaping a more interconnected and prosperous world. These two countries, China and Malaysia, have had diplomatic relations since May 1974, and their bilateral agreement have been extensive in trade, commerce, and tourism. China has rich diverse cultural heritage spanning thousands of years, making it one of the world's oldest civilizations. China and Malaysia recognize the potential for economic synergy, and their collaborative efforts have been demonstrated in various initiatives, including the Belt and Road Initiative. Although it's too soon to assess the impact of this ambitious initiative, it has the potential to transform the underdeveloped the Belt and Road region into a vibrant new economic pillar and contribute to economic policy thinking by combining the successful experience of the rapidly developing market economy. I will pass the presentation to the next person. For consideration.
Okay, for keys and stakeholder. Next. In the context of bilateral agreement between Malaysia and China, an array of actors plays pivotal roles, each driven by distinct interest and motivation. Malaysia, as the key participant, is principally focused on economic development, trade expansion, and the collective strategic partnership. So there are four key actors and also their interests. So the first one, as you can see, is the international organization, the United Nations. Their interest is not directly involved in the bilateral agreement and holds the potential to influence diplomatic dialogue by setting international norms. Issue pertaining to sustainable development, human rights, and regional stability. The next one is individual ranging from political leaders to citizens. They contribute to the complex web of interest. Political leaders in Malaysia and China will influence driven by motivation encompassing national development, diplomatic standing, and political stability. For public opinion, shaped by societal interest, expectation for economic benefits, job opportunities, and improvement in living standards, wholly in both nations. The third one is the states, which are Malaysia and China. Diplomats and negotiation teams from Malaysia and China are critical actors, representing the interests of their respective nations. Their goals involve finding common ground, resolving disputes, and ensuring that the terms of the agreement align with national interests. Media outlets play a significant role in shaping public opinion and disseminating information about the bilateral agreement. And the last one is that non-state actor, that environmental group, bring attention to concern about the impact of infrastructure projects on ecosystem and biodiversity. Their goals encompass advocating for sustainable development practice, raising awareness, influencing policy decision. Successful bilateral agreement demand a delicate balance, accommodating diverse perspectives and addressing potential conflicts for a mutually beneficial outcomes. So I will continue for the next slide. It's about the causes and triggers. Malaysia and China bilateral agreement driven by economic collaboration, strengthen trade dismantle barriers, and stimulate cross-border investment, fostering shared prosperity and growth. There are three causes and triggers of this bilateral agreement. Okay, the first one is Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. The geopolitical landscape shaped by Malaysia's active participation in China Belt and Road Initiative exemplifies a strategic alignment with China that extends beyond immediate economic gains. The infrastructure development and connectivity projects stemming from the strategic convergence have not only bolstered economic ties but also contribute to broader geopolitical objectives. Next is the positive diplomatic. Positive diplomatic relations between Malaysia and China are instrumental in creating an environment conducive to successful negotiation. Both nations recognizes of the importance of regional stability, and their roles in international affairs have fostered diplomatic cooperation. And last but not least, people-to-people ties. Okay, culture and people-to-people ties have been actively nurtured through this bilateral agreement, enriching the fabric of the relationship between Malaysia and China. Cultural diplomacy and educational partnership, key components of this agreement, serve as bridge that deepen the understanding between the citizens of both nations. This initiative strengthen special bond and foster collaboration across various fields. This for me.
I will continue about the international relations The international relation theories can be applied on bilateral agreement between China and Malaysia and can provide insight into the dynamics and their diplomatic interaction. Some of the theories that can be applied are realism, liberalism, constructivism, and balance of power. First, realism theory is a school of thought that emphasizes the continuous and competitive aspect of international relations and is essential to understand how nations survive. States are motivated by the desire of national security, power, and self-interest. After this, argument is analysis a few viewpoints from this theory, such as economic leverage, national interest, and possibility for conflict can be utilized. Realists would examine economic partnership in great detail to determine how they may be used to increase their political influence. The 49 years old trade relation between Malaysia and China has significantly improved with the establishment of the ASEAN-China Free Trade Area. Realists would then examine each nation's national interests. China's primary concerns are the maintenance of its fundamental structure and security, the defense of its territorial integrity and sovereignty, and the steady growth of its economic society. China and Malaysia in bilateral agreements to safeguard their respective national interests. The last viewpoints consider the possibility of violence, and realists would be worried of any provision in the agreement that might lead to hostilities or security issues. For instance, in 2009, China's increased assertiveness in the South China Sea put Malaysia alliance to the test. Next is liberalism. Liberalism is based on the moral agreement that ensuring the right of individual person of life, liberty, and property is the highest goal of government. Cooperation, international organization, and economic independence are emphasized by liberals. Several viewpoints from this philosophy, including market access, free trade, and regulatory cooperation, can be implemented. Liberals will extensively study the ASEAN-China Free Trade Area, which support the free movement of product and service within China and Malaysia by removing tariff and other obstacles. In November 2000, China put up the concept of a free trade zone. Liberals would then look at market access in terms of guaranteeing equality between the two nations and equitable market access for companies, which would promote healthy competition and economic expansion. The ability of a nation to sell goods and services internationally is referred to as market access. On 5 November 2023, China further expand market access and imports and remove barriers to foreign investment in manufacturing. Plus, liberals would closely examine the regulatory cooperation as it facilitates coordination and cooperation between regulatory bodies to streamline process and reduce unnecessary. Regulatory cooperation is a process where governments work together to adopt international standards, harmonize or align regulations, share information and experience, and reduce unnecessary regulatory difference. The two countries signed a memorandum of understanding of cross-border regulatory cooperation on accounting and audit matters under their respective oversight. Next is constructivism. Constructivism is a school of thought that is based on the idea that people actively construct or make their own knowledge, and the reality is determined by experience as a linear. State behavior is influenced by shared ideas, norms, and identities. A few perspectives from this theory can be applied, such as identity norms, additional factors, and constructivism. Constructivists stress that states' identities in relation to particular norms affect how they interact. Shared cultural or regional identities between China and Malaysia might influence the nature of their cooperative partnership. Chinese ambassador to Malaysia, Ouyang Yujing, observed that Othmhua, Chinese language, Chinese costume, and lifestyles are all prevalent in Malaysia. Constructivists then contend that ideas and belief, additional factors, play a critical role in determine the behavior of state. This bilateral agreement between Malaysia and China can be an expression of common views on regional stability, economic growth, and collaboration. Furthermore, constructivists recognize the significance of social constructivism, specifically the social exchange discussion between Malaysia and China. It will be assumed that both nations have shaped their perceptions of one another's goals and objectives. Next theory is balance of power theory states is an equilibrium of powers sufficient to discourage or prevent one nation or party from imposing its will or interfering with the interests of another. States seek to maintain or shift the balance of power in their favor. A few perspectives from this theory can be applied, such as alliance and alignment and power dynamics and strategic considerations. According to this view, states take action to increase their powers and security. Compare Malaysia, a middle power nation, to China, a large power nation. The former has greater relative power. China may have more influence over the terms of the deal than Malaysia does, since a nation with greater strength may be able to influence the terms more. Additionally, this theory proposes alliance and alignment, taking into account the way in which states align or establish alliance in response to their relative power. Bilateral agreement may be impacted by the broader geopolitical context, which includes China or Malaysia affiliation or connection with other nations. A different angle on the balance of power theory is the strategic assessment of military might, economic might, and geopolitical clout. Strategic factors could be taken into account by China and Malaysia during bilateral negotiation. China's principal export and import partner is Malaysia. China fears that once Malaysia possesses the capacity to reduce its reliance on the market and credit, it will become less dependent on the economy. Malaysia would be more option and more open according to China. Next, I will continue to the diplomacy and conflict resolution. The effectiveness of diplomatic effort to build a good relation between China and Malaysia depends on continued communication and the capacity to identify common ground. China and Malaysia diplomatic strategy, economic objective, and geopolitical consideration all impact how effective their diplomatic efforts are in bilateral accord. Trade, investment, and regional stability negotiation are important consideration. In the framework of bilateral agreement, diplomatic activities between Malaysia and China entail a number of calculated step and discussion to improve cooperation and handle any possible obstacle. Some of diplomatic efforts between China and Malaysia are high-level diplomacy, trade and economic cooperation, crisis management and conflict resolution. High-level diplomacy includes the head of state and foreign minister engaging in diplomatic discussion to set the direction of bilateral relations. The top-level official did the state visit and meetings play a crucial role in fostering understanding and cooperation. Any conflict needs negotiation from both parties to engage in discussion to find mutual acceptable solution. On 11 and 12 August 2023, Director of the Office of the Central Commission for Foreign Affairs and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Wang Yi, visited Malaysia. His Excellency Wang Yi paid courtesy to Yang Amat Berhormat Dr. Sri Ibrahim as Prime Minister and had bilateral meetings with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Yang Berhormat Dr. Sri Raja Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir. His Excellency Wang Yi visit will provide an excellent opportunity for both countries to discuss and exchange views bilaterally. Next, we continue to NORFATEHAH.
Thank you, KHAISYAH. So next, I'll be explaining about international law and norms. International law is essential to bilateral agreements between Malaysia and China because it provides a legal framework, protect each party's rights and duties, and help resolve disputes. The role of international law in bilateral agreements is highlighted by the following aspect. So basically, the primary tool for resolving territorial disputes is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is also known as the UNCLOS. The UNCLOS serves as a fundamental body of international law that defines government rights and responsibility with respect to how they use the oceans. In respect to the South China Sea conflicts between China and Malaysia, this UNCLOS provides a framework for defining maritime borders and exclusive economic EEZ and the rights of coastal nation. In light of this, UNCLOS has significant influence on the legal framework that governs talks and potential dispute resolution. This UNCLOS offers a foundation or point of departure for talks regarding marine delimitation and resource management. Next is Bilateral Trade Agreement and Investment Treaties, BITS. These agreements serve as another function of international law, which protecting investment, resolving dispute, and ensuring compliance with international trade standards are all subjects that are frequently addressed in these agreements. Malaysia and China may now collaborate economically within a legal framework thanks to these treaties. Furthermore, this agreement assures that both countries follow the standard and laws that have been created on trade practices, intellectual property rights, and investment protection. They also serve as a mirror of international laws. The next mechanism is arbitration and dispute resolution, wherein China and Malaysia may include a clause in their bilateral agreement designating arbitration as one of the dispute resolution processes. A neutral forum for resolving dispute between states is provided by international law, particularly in regards to establishments such as the International Court of Arbitration and the Permanent Court of Arbitrations. The result of this function is that by guaranteeing that disagreements are resolved within the bounds of the law, the inclusion of dispute resolution processes in bilateral agreement contributes to stability and adherence to international law. In addition, there is environmental law and sustainable development, whereby international environmental law governs both sustainable development and environmental protection. Adherence to these standards might facilitate cooperation on projects with possible environmental implication when it comes to bilateral agreements between Malaysia and China. When it comes to bilateral agreement between Malaysia and China, it is possible to ensure that economic development is carried out in a way that minimizes environmental harm and complies with the goals of global sustainability by including international environmental legislation in bilateral agreements. Thank you, KHAISYAH. So next, I'll be explaining about international law and norms. International law is essential to bilateral agreements between Malaysia and China because it provides a legal framework, protect each party's rights and duties, and help resolve disputes. The role of international law in bilateral agreements is highlighted by the following aspect. So basically, the primary tool for resolving territorial disputes is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is also known as the UNCLOS. The UNCLOS serves as a fundamental body of international law that defines government rights and responsibility with respect to how they use the oceans. In respect to the South China Sea conflicts between China and Malaysia, this UNCLOS provides a framework for defining maritime borders and exclusive economic EEZ and the rights of coastal nation. In light of this, UNCLOS has significant influence on the legal framework. I will also explain about impact on global relations. Bilateral agreements between countries foster trade and economy by allowing access to each other's markets and maintaining equity through rules guiding business activities. This agreement may have varying consequences on regional and international relations, depending on the specific participating nation and geopolitical backdrop. For example, diplomatic ties, the economic climate, and geopolitical dynamics are all impacted by bilateral agreements between China and Malaysia. These factors have a significant influence on regional and global relations. Through bilateral agreement and investment, where China and Malaysia have actively pursued economic cooperation that has influenced global supply chains, boosted Southeast Asia economy, and had a knock-on effect on regional economic dynamics, are some ways that bilateral agreements have impact regional and global relations. The bilateral agreements between China and Malaysia may also have an impact on global trade and economic order, as well as trade policy and international markets. In addition, the dynamic of the South China Sea, over which China and Malaysia both have territorial claims, have become a key source of regional conflict, and regional security and stability have an influence on both regional and global relations. The security and stability of the region are impacted by these bilateral agreements, especially when it comes to maritime issues. Positive development might contribute to peace, but conflict can also have broader geographical impacts. Next is infrastructure development is impacted by the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. This is because Malaysia's participation in China's Belt and Road Initiative has led to significant infrastructure development. These activities impact not just bilateral relations, but also regional connectivity and economic growth. Potential participation in the BRI by other regional countries might have an influence on broader geopolitical and economic issues. And not to mention, Malaysia is a member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nation, which is also known as ASEAN, which is multilateral forum and organization. This bilateral agreement between China and Malaysia may have an impact on ASEAN dynamics as the region strives to maintain its unity and address regional concerns. ASEAN's stance on several issues might be impacted by the collaboration or conflict between China and Malaysia. In essence, the implication of Malaysia and China's bilateral accords go far beyond their existing relationships. So here we can say that bilateral agreement does impact economic structure, diplomatic affinities, and security dynamics, all of which impact regional and international interaction. So that is all from me. So I'm going to pass to our last presenters, ATIKAH.
Okay, I will be presenting the media and public perceptions. So next slide. Okay, here, the media may highlight this development regarding the growth of diplomatic relationships between the two countries. Positive storylines highlighting cooperation, cross-cultural exchanges, and mutual aid could be pushed, showing a cordial relationship that benefits both nations. The growth potential also affects the media, which may draw attention to how the agreement might open doors for information sharing, collaborative projects, and skill development via partnerships in education, all of which would be advantageous to the people of Malaysia. On the other hand, it might have an impact on public perception, where some media outlets may express concerns about Malaysia's vulnerability to debt trap issues due to significant Chinese investments. They can cite examples from other nations where comparable accords led to excessive debt loads, casting doubt on Malaysia's financial stability and sovereignty. Other than that, detractors might significantly concentrate on the project's effects on the environment and society if they harm the environment or uproot residents. Reports may draw attention to difficulties related to Chinese investments in labor, land rights, or sustainability. Reports that cast doubt on the agreement's effects on Malaysia's sovereignty or national interests may appear. Top points could include whether the agreement's conditions unduly benefits China or jeopardize Malaysia's independence. So next slide. Okay, next is the lessons and indications. The bilateral agreement between China and Malaysia is a case study with important lessons to be learned and possible ramifications for international relations. One of the case's most important lessons is how crucial it is to strike a balance between national interests and international commitments. Malaysia aimed to improve its infrastructure and achieve economic growth, but it also had to watch out for possible hazards, including debt dependency and sovereignty issues. Apart from that, it emphasized how important it is for these kinds of agreements to be transparent and open to the public. Opposition and mistrust from the public might result from a lack of transparency. It is possible to make conclusions on this necessity of open communication and information sharing to win over the people. It might also have an impact on current attempts at bilateral and international diplomacy. The success or failure of the deal could influence future discussions and partnerships between China and Malaysia, which could affect the global environment. So next, I will pass to DAYANG on the conclusion part.
To conclude our presentation for today, the China and Malaysia Bilateral Agreement represents a positive stride towards an interconnected and cooperative world. As these two nations continue to navigate the evolving global landscape, their commitment to collaboration stands as a beacon for international relations based on mutual respect, shared interest, and a commitment to building a prosperous and harmonious future together. That's all from our group. Thank you.
Hi, I would like to invite both the government and the opposition team to prepare yourself for today's debate. Good afternoon to all present today. The motion for today's debate is this House believes that bilateral agreement is necessary for nations because it's helped to gain a lot of benefits. Now, without further ado, I call upon the PM from the government, Ms. NORFATEHAH, to deliver her speech on today's motion. This House believes that bilateral agreement is necessary for nations because it's helped to gain a lot of benefits.
Okay. Good afternoon to the Honorable Chairperson, worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this debate. Thank you for the opportunity. Our motion for today's debate is this House believes that bilateral agreement is necessary for a nation because it helps to gain a lot of benefits. Bilateral agreements can be defined as a binding agreement between two parties where both exchange promises to perform and fulfill one side of the bargain, and can refer to a deal reached by nations or parties with the goal of minimizing trade deficit or specific interest. Although this is not always the case, bilateral agreement usually entail equal responsibility or consideration from the offerer and the offeree. So, from the definitions, our motion has been clearly stated that we, affirmative team, agree and strongly believe that bilateral agreement is necessary for every nation, and we, as the affirmative team, absolutely agree that bilateral agreements offer a lot of advantages for the nations or parties.
Now, without further ado, I call upon the PM from the government, Ms. NORFATEHAH, to deliver her speech on today's motion. This House believes that bilateral agreement is necessary for nations because it's helped to gain a lot of benefits.
Okay, first point is that bilateral agreement is necessary since it involves only two countries. Thus, bilateral agreements are negotiated more steadily than multilateral agreements, And if you compare it to multilateral accords, bilateral trade deals are initiated and provide economic advantages more quickly. And in fact, when negotiations for multilateral trade agreements are unsuccessful, many nations will negotiate bilateral agreement instead.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Are you saying that agreements that involve more than two countries are not necessary for a nation? And what makes you think it can be negotiated steadily, the same as bilateral agreements?
Okay, thank you for your question, Ms. SYAHIRAH. First of all, I'm not saying agreements that involve more than two countries are not necessary, but I do believe that bilateral agreements is better than the others because it could help build trust and relationships. And also, this is because by establishing a one-to-one working connections, I believe it can assist the parties' relationship and trust grow. It may be easier to establish a rapid and mutual understanding in bilateral agreements. And secondly, what makes me think that bilateral agreements are negotiated more steadily is because dealing with several parties in multilateral agreement is usually more complicated and time-consuming than negotiation with the parties. And when there is a sense of urgency or when judgment must be made quickly, this may be quite important. So I hope that answered your questions. But now, I will continue with my second argument, which is that trade and economic connection benefit greatly from bilateral agreement. This is due to the fact that parties to a bilateral trade agreement encourage trade and economic growth by granting one another access to the market. As a result of company activities adhering to a set of rules, the agreement also promotes equity. The bilateral agreements between China and Malaysia demonstrate this. China is one of Malaysia's principal trading partners. The two countries have engaged in substantial bilateral trade in a variety of sectors, including electronics, manufactured goods, rubbers, and palm oils. The volume of trade between China and Malaysia has been increasing over time. Furthermore, Malaysia imports commodities made in China and exports a variety of goods to China. And on top of that, China has made large investment in Malaysia, mostly in the areas of real estate, manufacturing, and infrastructure development. The two nations' economic relations have been reinforced and economic development has resulted from this investment. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, bilateral agreement indeed have a good impact for nations. Thus, it is very necessary for nations. That is all from me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That is enough for my arguments. It will be continued by the second speaker later.
Thank you, Ms. Fatihah. I shall now invite Ms. Dayang, the leader of the opposition, to deliver her speech.
Thank you, Ms. Chairperson. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to the Chairperson for the opportunity to allow me on behalf of the opposition team to argue that bilateral agreement is necessary for the nation because it helps to gain a lot of benefit. First of all, different from my point of view, bilateral agreements can make the countries involved will be more dependent on the agreement. Depending on how far the bilateral agreement works on both sides, there still might have changes that can create a risk of economic or political dependency. If any situation that cannot be predicted happens that is disrupted for any reason, it can have severe consequences for the dependent nation. For the impact on political views, for example, China's geopolitical will influence on Malaysia's political landscape. Malaysia's diplomatic stance on issues such as South China Sea dispute, a region where Malaysia has territorial claims, is influenced by its relationship with China. The delicacy of balancing of bilateral agreement with China and safeguarding the country interests in the South China Sea underline the political complexities that Malaysia is going through. In addition, China's influence on Malaysia politics is evident in policy alignment and political decision. Economic dependency has the potential to point to political influence, raising questions about Malaysia's ability to pursue independent policies and decisions without outside pressure. To be detailed in Malaysia's dependency on China and economic views, if Malaysia relies heavily on its bilateral agreement with China, any economic shock such as China changing its policy may lead to direct and immediate impact on Malaysia's economic well-being. China has emerged as one of Malaysia's largest trading partners. Economic relations is characterized by significant bilateral trade, with China being the main destination for Malaysia export and the main source of import. Economic dependence is prominently underscored by Malaysia's reliance on the Chinese market, particularly in bilateral agreements governing trade, especially in commodities and manufactured goods. The complexity of this agreement means that fluctuation in this Chinese economy with a direct and immediate impact on Malaysia's trade performance. Highlighting interconnected nature of their economic relation, the term negotiate within these bilateral agreements play a crucial role in shaping the parameter of this economic dependence, affecting the ebb and flow of trade dynamics between these two nations.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Okay, so you stated that if China changes their policy, it may lead to a direct and immediate impact on Malaysia's economic well-being. But from what I have understood, it will impact the economy drastically if only the policy also changes immediately. And also, did you know that actually the biggest trading partner for China is Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and even Russia? So if China decided to change their policy, it will affect the other countries too, not only Malaysia. So do you think it will be necessary for China to change their policy suddenly?
Thank you for the question. First of all, changes in China policies can indeed have significant global implications, given its status as a major economic player and its extensive trade relationship. If China were to make abrupt and substantial policy changes, it could affect not only Malaysia but also the other key trading partners such as Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Russia, as you mentioned. Back to your question, whether China must change its policy suddenly depends on the specific circumstance and the objective behind those changes. In general, abrupt policy shift can lead to economic ties to China. In many cases, countries and businesses prefer gradual and well-communicated policy adjustment to allow for a smoother transition and adaptation to new economic conditions. Cooperation and dialogue between these two nations are essential to address potential challenges and ensure stability in the international economic system. That's all from my point of view, the opposition side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dayang. I now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister, Ms. KHAISYAH AMIRA, to deliver her speech.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, for giving me a chance to speak. Good afternoon to respectable Chairperson, Honorable opponents, ladies and gentlemen. I, NOOR AMIRA, would like to give my arguments. First, these military agreements, China and Malaysia, have a good impact on political and security cooperation. Malaysia defense relation with China improved steadily in the early 1990s, and especially since the 2005 MOU on bilateral defense cooperation was signed. Malaysia and China's defense cooperation peaked in 2017 under Prime Minister Najib Abdul Razak, thanks to several high-level meetings, significant military drills, breakthroughs in defense industry collaboration, and increase in naval visits, and ongoing military academy exchange. Hisham Hussein, the Ministry of Defense at that time, was in charge of this operation. Next, I would like to continue my second point. Bilateral agreements between China and Malaysia brings a good impact on social-cultural cooperation that has gradually expanded in two sectors, which are educational and tourism. Up to 2004, about 14,000 students were studying in Malaysia, and China encouraged students from Malaysia to further their study in China. The establishment of the Xiamen University branch campus in Malaysia is testimony to the fact of countries were serious in increasing educational collaboration. The institute goals are to promote a greater awareness of Chinese language and culture in Malaysia, and to expand knowledge of many foreign cultures. It is hardly unexpected that Chinese educational institutes have emerged in Malaysia, that the nation serves as Southeast Asian's center of education. According to the Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, which is UNESCO, Malaysia is among the top choices for international students seeking an education. Among the state expansion consists of cost, living standards, educational attainment, and cultural comfort. The favorable impact of the tourism sector on this social cultural interaction between Malaysia and China has been observed, with 16.7 million visitors arriving in China in 2017. China has ranked the fourth most popular travel destination globally, up to 59.3 million in 2016. I think that's all from me. Thank you for spending your time listening to my arguments.
Thank you, Ms. KHAISYAH AMIRA. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to listen to the second opposition speaker, Ms. SYAHIRAH.
Good evening, I be to Ms. Chairperson and to the other speakers. Thank you, Ms. Chairperson, for giving me a chance to speak. The topic for our debate is this House belief that bilateral agreement is necessary for a nation because it helps to gain a lot of benefits. We, from the negative team, believe that there are more disadvantages of bilateral agreement than the benefits. As we extend our examination of Malaysia-China bilateral agreement, it becomes imperative to dissect the potential disadvantages with a meticulous approach. The potential for trade imbalance poses a considerable risk. If the trade volume significantly favors one party, particularly if Malaysia becomes a net importer, it could lead to a trade deficit, thereby impacting the nation's overall economic stability. Therefore, a comprehensive evaluation of the sustainability of economic growth is necessary to gauge the long-term implication of these bilateral agreements. This involves an in-depth analysis of the economic dynamics, potential vulnerabilities, and strategies for mitigating associated risks. Collaborative efforts with international economic experts and think tanks could provide valuable insight into crafting robust economic policies that balance growth with resilience. Let me continue to my next point, is cultural assimilation. Cultural assimilation is indeed a nuanced concern that demands careful consideration. As economic ties threaten, there is legitimate risk of diluting Malaysia's unique cultural identity, while exposure to different cultures can be enriching. Persevering our heritage is paramount. Measures need to be in place to ensure that economic collaboration do not inadvertently lead to the erosion of our cultural distinctiveness. This involves implementing cultural preservation programs, promoting indigenous arts and tradition, and fostering an environment that values diversities. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. SYAHIRAH. It is now time to hear a rebuttal from the last speaker on the government side, Ms. ATIKAH.
Thank you to the chairperson for allowing me to speak up on my opinion or point of view on this topic. Good afternoon to all members who have been given their perspective on the topic. The Deputy Prime Minister said just now, the bilateral agreements between China and Malaysia have a good impact on political and security cooperation. This promotes stability and predictability in international relations, which are crucial for fostering peace and security. They facilitate a deeper understanding of each nation's priorities, leading to trust-building measures that serve as the foundation for long-term partnerships. But what had been stated by the second speaker of the opposition side, the potential for trade imbalances poses a considerable risk. The bilateral agreements are not merely about gaining benefits, they are about forging enduring connections based on mutual respect, cooperation, and pursuit of common goals, as we can see in case of Malaysia and China. They offer pragmatic and adaptable framework that enables nations to navigate the complexities of the modern world while nurturing diplomatic ties that can withstand the test of time. Ending on fostering enduring connections and emphasizing the broader values and impacts beyond immediate benefits can leave a strong impression on the audience. In my point of view, these agreements often extend beyond economic benefits, fostering cultural exchanges, educational collaborations, and scientific partnerships that enrich societies and contribute to global understanding. As for national sovereignty, both Malaysia and China respect the sovereignty of individual nations. They allow countries to protect and promote their interests without being bound by the concerns or priorities of a larger group of nations. So in closing, I urge all to remember that bilateral agreements are not mere documents, but representations of shared aspirations for a better world in international relations. I emphasize here that this motion should be accepted as it encapsulates the spirit of collaboration, understanding, and solidarity among nations. This spirit transcends boundaries and builds a future of cooperation and mutual respect. Thank you for lending your ears. That's all from me. I give back the station to our respective chairperson.
Thank you, the last presenter, Ms. Atikah. Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the end. With that, the House of Parliament is adjourned. Thank you.